have we lost any transfers from this hospital since the JPA started?
That I couldn't tell you, Tom.
If Gaylord has a transfer to do and they can't do it, does that roll to Arlington or to Waconia?
They'll try, if it's out of the hospital, they'll try and keep it local.
Okay, they do try.
Yeah, if it's going to Waconia, yeah, Gaylord will take it. But if it's going, like I say, to Abbott, north, Hennepin, those are the ones that I would venture to say Arlington people are going to take.
And in the last 2 years, what Arlington did, is Gaylord would, if they would transfer to Arlington or bring whoever to the Arlington hospital, Arlington gave up their transfers and let Gaylord transfer them back. And then in the last 2 years, Arlington's taken those transfers back, where even if Gaylord brought somebody to Arlington, since they're being transported from Arlington, even back to Gaylord, Arlington would take those calls. So it's been kind of a little flow over the last few years how we've done it. But it sounds good that Gaylord's actually taking them. If they're taking the call all the way to the hospital here and then continuing and taking them to a half-hour radius, at least they are doing it. They're just not doing the 5-hour one-way
They
or the 2-hour one-way thing.
They did one out of here today to Waconia.
Right.
And then we had the second call where we put together a crew for a call here in town, so.
So you got your short range and your long range coverage
Pretty much.
for transfers.
Yeah, time will tell how it works. Gosh, there's a lot to work out.
We need to give this a chance. There's the billing thing, these are all little things that we need to work out. And a lot of it, we needed to put in place before we could come up with some answers, because, it's like you gotta read the bill before you know what's in it, or you gotta pass the bill before you know what's in it.
Okay, anything else? All right, we'll move on to miscellaneous business, council member committee updates. Councilmember Omerion,
I have nothing new.
Councilmember Batcher,
I don't believe I have anything.
Councilmember Gilman,
I don't have anything since the last meeting either.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
All I have with the cable commission is I believe that the police department, the community centers, cameras are all up. All the business bills have been submitted, and I think there's one left to pay, and it is done.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Morgan.
I've got the library update. The library has purchased, I think there was 4 hotspots, is that the correct number? 4?
Yeah, I think
So a
that's right.
hotspot
I
is
think
essentially
yep.
kind of an internet access off of your phone. They're working on the policy before those actually become available for people to check out, and the checkout time would be a week. So if you get a library card, you can come in and check one out and
Nice.
gain internet access. Let's see, they requested,
I have a question on that. Is that, so you just check it out with your library card?
yeah.
So,
To get a
Just
complete
say-
laptop?
You're telling me. It's kind of surprised too.
so, okay, is there any limit on the amount of data that you use?
That was
I
my
don't believe so. It sounded like it was unlimited,
I mean,
7
that's-
days, and
Wow.
I had questioned the time period. They're only going to have 4 of them, so I think once the word gets spread, it's likely they're going to be a pretty hot commodity.
It has to be T-Mobile.
She indicated that T-Mobile was like the main one, but she made it sound like
The others
you
would
could
work.
use it off of
Really?
another
Oh.
provider as well.
And
The
they're
thing-
paying for all this data, correct?
And
grants.
that's just, you're gonna run into a data cap at some point. You're only gonna be allotted so many gigabytes
Yeah.
per month on that hotspot, and then after that, it's gonna throttle down to like dial-up speed. So
Mm.
at some point,
Depends on which part of the
after,
month you got
right,
it for.
you're gonna want them at the top of the billing cycle more than anything,
Well,
'cause-
and
So the
also
last week of the
unless
month,
they-
they're useless.
for the most part.
For the most part, they are
Unless
usually.
they regulate it
Cycles.
by week or something.
Well, 1 week, so if you bring it back, and I've asked that question, because, you know, I'm thinking, well, can I cut my internet? But, just kidding. If you bring it back and it's available the next day, you can charge
Check
it out, as long as you have a library card, and I have
You
my
do have-
paperwork filled out for mine.
There's something with the driver's, you have to,
Yeah, I think
driver's license also.
yeah, and there's, you know, you basically have to sign, because if you lose it,
Because if you
it's-
lose it or
yeah,
damage
it's
it,
like
you
a-
Gotta
will
a
be
deposit
you
on
will
it or
be paying
something,
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If they
I
have
was just,
capability.
are they gonna advertise that like at school and stuff like that? Cause I know that there's a lot of, kids at school that don't have internet at home that would really benefit from that.
yeah. I can check it. She's actually on vacation.
Okay.
I think you do have to be, I mean, a parent would have.
Well, a
Yeah, I
parent
think
could
they
do it
go
or
ahead.
whatever,
Yep,
so
yep,
they know
yep.
projects coming up or. at
So
least one thing.
something else that was sort of educational, I didn't realize it, but the local library can pull from, basically their main group, I forget the name of it.
Travis Dessous.
There we go. So they can pull books from that area, and if, you know, maybe they can't find it there, they can also, you know, go out further than that and
College libraries,
yeah.
so, and internationally, I think that she said something about a book they had gotten for somebody
Yeah.
from Germany.
Yeah, one of the ladies that was on the committee
Yep.
had actually gotten a book from overseas, so.
It's a pretty extensive network, libraries in general.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know,
It's,
I'll be honest,
Very.
I'm not one that frequents the library, but I didn't realize what was all,
I mean,
you
you
know,
can,
kind of
you can attain
available.
masters and doctorates in library
Library
services.
science.
That's how intricate it is.
that's all I got.
Okay. All right, on that same library note, we did talk about, and the question came up, 4 or 5 years ago, we started putting $10,000 away for a new library. Would you, 5?
5 or 10.
I thought it was 10, but anyhow, the sum of money.
A sum of money.
And they wanna know what the balance is. And if it's been done recently, I don't know, did we,
So there was a line item on our CIP or
Okay.
whatever that we used to have. And I was under the impression that CIP, we knew that there is this much, or there was 10,000, whatever it was, 5 or 10,000
yeah, either.
for the library going across, okay? But what Pat had explained to us at the end of last year or before,
Went to
or
the
the
general
mid
budget.
last year,
It went
That-
probably back in,
huh?
they go back in the general fund.
Back in the
So
general
it
fund.
goes right, if you don't use that money that's allocated for that specific thing,
Mhm.
what they were doing is just dumping it all back into the general fund.
Right.
Instead of keeping that amount of money for
Separate.
that specific line item, right? So
But
then after
The,
that,
the intent was to build a fund,
Yeah.
fund with an
Yeah.
ever increasing balance.
my thought process on our budget as a whole, with every line that's on there, is that if there's $75,000 or $50,000 for seal coating, and we only use 35, well then 15 goes into next year's, and that goes from 50 to 80 or 65 or whatever
Yep,
it would be that following year because we didn't use the money, okay? Same thing with every single line throughout our budget, but apparently it goes like this right into our general funds,
If
so.
you don't use it, you lose it.
So then
Right, so,
it's not being saved.
That's why
You're
we-
not
Well, that was a
highlighting.
concern, here
So-
were, there, you know, we had, and that Galen,
Yeah,
our
it was
former
very-
council
yeah.
member was there, and he said, I know that when that hospital lease was signed, that's when we started
10 or
putting money in.
12,000 or something,
I
think
thought
you
it was
brought up.
10.
10,000,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
It
don't
was
know if it
very
was that
adamant
much.
that, you know, the feeling was there's, you know, there could be $60,000, $70,000,
by now.
By now.
for this.
Cause it was, yeah, it has been at least 5-6 years or whatever, I remember
I
having
remember
it in there,
discussing
at
it.
least 5 years ago maybe,
Yeah.
that we are starting
Mhm.
that line item
Mhm.
or whatever for it.
Capital outlay for new library, 0,000 on
Okay,
there.
but that's not,
That's not where it's coming from, though. It was actually from the lease of,
Hospital.
It was
the
hospital fund.
But
yeah,
no,
it's-
but
or
it
ho-
had its own line.
Yeah,
So
it had its own.
It had its own line,
right.
there was money in there.
Yeah.
So these are all actuals, okay? So this 2017, why there's no money in there for the budget, or the 2018 budget, I don't know, because there should have been. I always remember their money being in there, unless we pulled it, which I don't
At the
remember.
end of the year.
But this was a discussion that I know Tom and I had
Both of
after
you.
we found out what was going on with the budget, is to have a finance committee meeting, sit down and figure out how we can move forward with leaving those
Well, even the
balances
CIP
in the
budget.
lines. Just that, I mean, yeah.
Because we would set stuff apart, and put it in the CIP and say we're saving 10,000 a year for the library, and we said, Pat, this needs to have to be shown every year. No, it doesn't, we just got a big kitty. Well, now here we are, how much is what, that's the problem
We
with
don't know
this
if we
big
have any
kitty
library.
theory.
Yeah.
Somebody's
It
gonna have to
doesn't
track
work.
it down and figure out what it is.
Yeah.
We
We
have
have
money.
to have annual tracking of those funds.
It should really just go into a separate account for it,
On
especially if
that line.
you're
No,
building.
On that line
The
in the
line.
CIP, it should stay right there.
That's right.
It should, if we're saving, whether it's for a fire engine, a squad car, whatever it is, if it takes 5 years for a squad car and we're putting 10,000, that means from 2020 to 2024, we've got those dollars in there every year. It's accounted for at the end of the fund, not putting some big pile where we don't even know where it went. But, because that's kinda what we're doing.
Yeah,
That has been
Yeah.
done.
We told,
Bank
we
account's
gotta
positive,
change
right?
that back, but it never got changed back. Those discussions were had, I don't know how
pressure.
many times.
So I would really enjoy
Get it.
financial committee meeting. To
But I
try
think-
and work through some things to see if we can get a handle and hopefully figure out, at least moving forward, what we can do. And it's not only that line, there's a lot of other lines, I think.
A lot of lines.
I think we owe the library committee something on this, probably before the next, or at the next
Or
meeting.
at
I
the
think
next-
it's
next
3
meeting.
months.
When's the next library committee meeting?
I think it's
Quarterly, so
yeah,
it would be
Quarterly?
May
It
something.
won't be next week.
No,
So we
But a
can
good
figure out
example, I
where
mean,
the
the fire
money,
department's already saying 2028, they need to replace a rig.
yeah.
So, all we have to
Ambulances.
do is say, okay, what does that cost? Okay, it's this much money, alright, what
Put away
portion is
this
that?
much per
Alright,
year.
that's $10,000 a year, and then we don't finance it for 20 years like
Library
the current
is,
one
We
is.
put
May
that away every
19th,
year.
May
That goes in-
19th.
Exactly, yeah.
That's what we've been trying to do.
that's what I was under the impression
We've been
was
pushing to
happening.
do.
Okay, then the only other thing I had was I did go to a meeting put on by Minnesota Housing Finance in Shakopee, and found out that what they proposed, or what they were talking about, was totally inappropriate for ever working here. It was subsidized housing, and it was also housing for the elderly, but they're, basically what happens is the programs that they have monies for and have appropriations for are programs that contractors or developers would latch onto. In other words, they would see, developer would see a need for, and know that the city of Arlington would qualify for MHFA funds, so the developer would then be able to access funds from MHFA to build a senior housing. But MHFA has got rules where the senior housing would have to be within X number of blocks of public transportation, and would have to be within a certain proximity of grocery stores, clothing stores. We just don't fit any of their,
But
Well,
public
instructions.
transportation would be
They're the bus,
Trailblazer,
yeah.
well,
Trailblazer.
maybe.
and that would
if
be
that's-
anywhere in our
No, I think,
community.
yeah, I
And that
don't know.
And then
Semstone would
wouldn't-
be, the
Yeah.
Semstone
The
lot
Semstone lot would be across the
they could
grocery
It's
walk-
close to the grocery store.
And then
But
wouldn't,
now we can think that, but you have to have a developer that will say, oh yeah, I'll move ahead with that.
but is that why we did the housing study? Is that why we spent the money on the housing study for things like that?
Yes.
Not for MHFA funds though, is what I'm
Well,
saying
not
here.
but
That's
it's
right.
big picture,
For
absolutely.
But the meeting I went to was MHFA only, so that's why I say it was inappropriate. Based on their rules and regulations, those funds would not be available in town, the
Rural?
city size of Arlington. No, I mean, they're talking about Shakopee, Chaska, and anything bigger is pretty
We should
much
file
where.
agreements.
Yeah, but
Yeah, well,
Chaska
that's-
doesn't have
that's a good
bus
story.
service. They don't have public transportation.
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, I would think
neither does
I would
Shakopee.
think our bus would.
Trailblazer.
We
Well,
have
they've got
that's what I
access
mean.
to
Oh, they
that
have-
Southwest.
They have
Yeah,
access to Southwest
is-
Transit,
That's
Yeah.
considered. public
Southwest
transit.
Metro Transit, and Shakopee has a separate
Southwest
Minnesota
stretches all
Valley.
out to Carver now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
There's a huge
The Dollar
stretch
General
right by
has
the
closed.
Elementary school.
Mm.
Some of the other shops on Main Street do.
MHA and Deed, that, there was a grant out there years ago that they would pay 25% of a project to put up, market rate rentals. It would go directly to the developer, not to the city. But I worked for the county at the time and we approached some local developers, but they weren't interested because they still said the rent would have to be too high to make a profit, even with 25% of that paid for. But you'd need the housing study to justify for the developer to have that information to justify doing it before we apply for a grant like that.
How long is a housing study good for?
A couple of years
Yeah.
just.
So we need to do something now or
Probably
else
be
it's
We need
just
to do
wasted
something
money.
now, or yeah, we need to
Be too
utilize
stale.
it.
One
We
example,
have given it out to some of the developers, like the one that purchased all the lots by the racetrack. And some people have gotten it and used it and asked about what type of housing was necessary from that.
But we need to use it more.
I know one example I was given was senior housing in Belle Plaine. I believe it's in the process of being built, or I think it's functional already. And the, was a single bedroom, $940 a month. So,
But is that subsidized then too?
no, that one was not.
You
That
said
was market rate?
senior
That was
housing?
market
Is that
rate housing.
assisted,
That's
or
a
they're-
senior non-assisted, so I suppose senior 55 and over or
Is
something
that
like
right
that.
next to the clinic?
I don't know,
The new
yeah,
clinic that they have now?
probably.
That's
I
nice.
didn't catch where it was, but, so. All right, anyone else? If not, a motion is in order to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Hattlestead, second by Councilmember Batchor to adjourn the meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Meeting